The Prison Butcher, How One Man Turned Fear into Power. The Smell of Blood Behind Bars. If you're ready for a story darker than the night itself, hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to hear will change the way you think about life behind bars forever. In the heart of South Carolina, 1975, inside the cold, steel walls of the state penitentiary, there was one man every inmate feared, Donald Henry Gaskins. Small in stature, barely over 5 feet tall, but known to everyone by one name, the Prison Butcher. He didn't earn that name from a single act. It was a title forged in screams, blood, and absolute control. Gaskins had already been sentenced to life for multiple murders, but to him, prison was no punishment, it was a new hunting ground. His eyes were sharp, his voice calm, and his reputation lethal. When he walked into the cell block, silence followed. Even the toughest gang members looked away. He didn't need muscle. He had something far more dangerous, psychological power. Guards often joked that Gaskins was too small to hurt anyone. But they stopped laughing when inmates began turning up dead, bodies found in showers, laundry rooms, or slumped against cell doors, their throats cut open with makeshift blades carved from toothbrushes. The official reports labeled them gang disputes. But everyone inside knew the truth. Gaskins was sending a message. He wasn't killing for revenge or survival. He was building a kingdom. A silent empire of fear. If you owed him, you lived under his rules. If you crossed him, your time was numbered. He started making deals, offering protection to weaker inmates, passing messages between gangs, and feeding guards information when it suited him. Each move gave him leverage. Each secret gave him control. One night, a young inmate named Brooks stumbled into the warden's office, trembling. He claimed Gaskins had forced him to clean up a murder in cell block C. When officers went to investigate, the cell was spotless. No blood, no weapon, nothing. Just one eerie thing left behind, a single piece of paper on the bed with a line scrawled in pencil: "You can't catch what's already inside you." That same night, another inmate vanished. No fight, no noise, no trace. By morning, rumors spread that Gaskins had a secret room, a place deep inside the prison where he hid his victims before disposing of them through the plumbing system that ran beneath the old cell blocks. The guards laughed at the idea, until a maintenance worker found a piece of cloth and bone fragments lodged in a pipe. The warden ordered an immediate lockdown. Every cell searched, every inmate questioned. But when they reached Gaskins' cell, he was sitting calmly on his bed, reading a Bible. "You're looking for the devil," he said without looking up, "but the devil's been working for you all along." Later that day, one of the guards assigned to watch him collapsed. His coffee had been poisoned. The cup was traced back to the kitchen, an area where Gaskins had been seen hours before. It was the first time the prison realized, this man didn't need freedom to kill. He was free inside his cage. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered Gaskins had been sending coded letters to someone outside the prison. Letters discussing payment, loyalty, and deliveries. Each one signed with a strange mark, a knife drawn through the letter P. But when detectives traced the return address and opened the small wooden locker where the letters were supposed to arrive, what they found changed everything. The investigation unravels. When the prison officials finally started piecing things together, it was already too late. Gaskins's name had been whispered in every corridor, every cell block, and even in the warden's office. He wasn't just another inmate anymore. He had become an invisible force that dictated life and death inside the walls of the South Carolina penitentiary. But when bodies began piling up faster than reports could be filed, an internal investigation was launched. What they found would shock even the most hardened investigators. At first, the deaths looked unrelated, accidents, suicides, or random acts of inmate violence. But Officer Martin, a seasoned guard with 20 years behind the walls, noticed a chilling pattern. The victims had all shared one thing. At some point they had crossed paths with Gaskins. One had stolen food from his cell, another had mocked him during mealtime, and yet another had tried to snitch about his contraband deals. Each was found dead within a week. Some were poisoned, others strangled, and one, horrifyingly, had his throat slit with a sharpened toothbrush. Detectives from the state's Department of Corrections began interviewing inmates. Most refused to speak, shaking their heads, their eyes darting toward the cameras. But one man finally cracked. His voice trembled as he whispered, "He don't need knives, man. He got people." Even guards scared of him. That statement changed everything. The deeper investigators dug, the clearer it became that Gaskins had built a shadow empire inside the prison. He wasn't just killing, he was running a system. From contraband smuggling to protection rackets, he controlled it all. He paid certain guards for information, used inmates as enforcers and manipulated the prison's hierarchy to his advantage. It was a kingdom built not on money or drugs but pure fear. Gaskins had a simple rule: loyalty or death. Inmates either worked for him or disappeared. He even kept meticulous notes, coded entries hidden in the pages of old Bibles and law books. When the investigators found these journals, they realized he had documented everything: debts owed, jobs completed, and even his future targets. It was his version of accounting written in blood. The warden, under pressure from the state, ordered a lockdown and a full cell sweep. Dozens of shanks, razors, and homemade weapons were found, all traced back to his network. But Gaskins himself seemed calm, even amused, when interrogated. Sitting in the cold metal chair, he smiled and said, "You can't lock down fear. It's already in here." That line would haunt the investigators long after the case ended. Despite all the evidence, no one could fully prove how he managed to communicate with his associates after isolation. Some believed he used corrupt guards. Others said he devised coded messages through laundry tags and commissary orders. As news of his secret operation spread, the prison administration faced public outrage. How could a single man serving multiple life sentences control an entire institution? But the truth was darker: the system had become dependent on him. His reign of fear had actually kept the prison strangely stable. Once Gaskins was isolated, violence surged among the other inmates who once feared his wrath. The system realized that even evil, when organized, can create order. In the months that followed, the prison butcher case became one of the most studied examples of power manipulation behind bars. Reports revealed that Gaskins didn't just thrive in chaos, he engineered it. He used terror as a tool, psychology as a weapon, and silence as his shield. The man who once entered prison as a petty criminal had become the ultimate puppeteer of fear. And as investigators sealed away his personal journal, one final line written in shaky pen ink sent chills through every officer who read it. "Power isn't freedom. It's control, and control never leaves the walls." The fall of a phantom. The warden's office was silent the morning they moved Gaskins into permanent solitary confinement. The decision came after months of unrest, bribes, and cover-ups. The state had finally intervened, not because they had ended his power but because they feared it. Gaskins had turned the penitentiary into a pressure cooker, and his network still operated like clockwork, even with him behind reinforced steel. Removing him was less about justice and more about survival, for the prison, and for everyone still breathing inside it. At first, Gaskins seemed unbothered by isolation. He even smiled as they escorted him through the corridor, his wrists shackled, humming a low tune that echoed eerily off the concrete walls. To the guards, it was just another inmate transfer. To those who knew him, it was like moving the devil himself into his throne. The cell, a 6-by-8-foot steel box, had no window, no sound, and no contact. Yet somehow, fear still moved through the prison like smoke. Days turned into weeks. Inmates began hearing whispers through the ventilation system. Codes, names, warnings. One prisoner claimed that Gaskins had found a way to communicate through the plumbing system, using the rhythmic tapping of water pipes to send orders. The guards dismissed it as paranoia, but then another body turned up. Same pattern. Same precision. When investigators checked, they found nothing. No letters, no visitors, no access. But the evidence was undeniable. Even cut off, Gaskins was still pulling strings. Oh, that was the question that haunted the entire staff. A young officer named Ramirez grew obsessed with finding out. He volunteered for night shifts near solitary, hoping to catch something. A sound, a message, anything. One night, around 2:45 a.m., he heard it. A faint tapping sound from inside Gaskins's cell, slow and deliberate, almost like Morse code. Ramirez leaned in close. Then came a whisper through the metal door, "They still listen." The next morning, Ramirez requested a transfer. He never returned. By now, the warden had had enough. He ordered Gaskins moved to a maximum security psychiatric unit, a place where even his voice would die in silence. But when the guards opened his cell, Gaskins was sitting perfectly still, staring at the wall. He hadn't eaten in days. On the wall, scratched deep into the paint with a piece of metal, were 3 words: "It's already out." Psychiatrists later said Gaskins had begun to fracture. The power he once held over others had turned inward. He started talking to himself, or to the voices he claimed were still working for him. His notes became erratic, filled with strange symbols and phrases about control, obedience, and punishment. He believed his influence had evolved beyond physical barriers, that fear itself was now carrying on his work. By the time he died, Alone, unrepentant and buried under a fake name, the prison had changed forever. The gangs that once operated under his silent command fractured into chaos. Murders increased. Guards quit in record numbers. And in the control room, one of the old officers swore that every night, just before lights out, the prison intercom let out a faint static, followed by a whisper that chilled everyone to the bone. "I'm still here." Years later, a journalist investigating the case gained access to Gaskins's last journals. Among the scrawled words in manic handwriting, one page stood out. A simple diagram of the prison, marked with dots and arrows connecting every cell block, every guard station. At the center of it all was a single word underlined twice: control. The story of Donald P. Gaskins, the real-life prison butcher, remains one of the most disturbing examples of how power thrives in darkness, how a man stripped of everything could still make fear his empire. Even in death, his legacy lingered, proving his final belief true. Power doesn't die behind bars. It waits.